Welcome to Compass Teachers Show. I'm your host, Stephen. My job is to interview teachers around the world and tease out their teaching tactics, education research, or tools they use. Hopefully, this show can offer some ideas for you to experiment in your classroom. Dear my listeners, how is your feeling now? Do you feel exhausted or feel like your life is okay? In this bizarre year, I have heard so many educators feel overwhelmed or anxious for the enormous change. Today, we are really lucky to have Amber Harper to guide us how to tune in ourselves in these crazy days. Amber Harper is an educator, author, Google certified trainer, and teacher burnout coach. She's the founder of burningteacher.com and author of Hacking Teacher Burnout, which empowers burnout teachers to believe that they deserve and can achieve a happier and more fulfilled life with her 8-step burn-in process. Amber also hosts a weekly podcast dedicated to action, inspiration, and support for teachers dealing with burnout. This show is called the Burn-In Teacher Podcast. Without further ado, let's enjoy our conversation with Amber. Hello, Amber. Thank you for joining me today.
Hello, Typhen. It's so nice to meet you. Thank you for inviting me onto your podcast.
Amber, I know that you used to be an elementary teacher, but now you are coaching teachers for self-care. I think this career change is not subtle. So I'm curious, what is the story behind that drove you to create the Burn-In movement?
Oh, that's such a great question. And I love answering it because it allows me to share my own vulnerable story and challenges with burnout in my own life. So I started teaching in 2007, and this was right on the verge of, or right whenever the No Child Left Behind movement was really starting to take effect in our classrooms. And aside from that and these, external pressures that were coming from our government, I was also feeling very challenged by my first year of teaching with my team. And from then on, for the rest of my 12-year career, I rode a roller coaster of highs and lows, burnout, and then I would be good and feel great, and then I would burn out again. And I burned out over and over and over again for 12 years. And it was in that final round of burnout that I had an experience in my life that really changed my trajectory. And that had to do with what I was going to truly do about this cycle of burnout that I was in. And I taught in 2 different districts, 3 different schools, many different grade levels, and all of them offered, a lot of different challenges that caused me to grow professionally and personally. But they also really helped me to grow professionally in knowing what it is that I could truly change about myself and the way that I viewed my future, both as an educator and as a human in general. And that's really where Burned In Teacher was created, because I didn't feel, back in 2016, whenever I created Burned In Teacher, I really created it out of my own burnout, because I thought, I can't be the only person in the entire world that continues to struggle and have these internal challenges like that I'm having, because I loved teaching. I loved my coworkers. I loved my content and my kids, but there was just something in me that just was not settling, and was not helping me to feel like I was successful. So I started Burned In Teacher, back in 2016, really telling my story of burn in and how I was going to take myself and I was going to create this system that I needed, that I couldn't find anywhere else. Because if I would try to talk about it with people, it would turn into that conversation of, yes, I know, I've been there too. This is the way it is, go for a walk, go for a run, go have a bubble bath. And that didn't work for me. I did all of those things and I was still finding myself in states of misery. So I wanted to create something that I truly needed as somebody who was activated. And I would do anything that you told me to do if I could see that it would offer me results in any part of my life. And I could not find outside of articles of, signs of burnout and, these typical ways of self-care that really helped me to grow and to make a change. So that is sort of the long and the short of why I now, empower teachers through Burn In Teacher.
Great. So, Amber, you mentioned that in the past you experienced multiple burnout. So, how did you know you were burnt out at that time? Because I've noticed that some people may not notice that they are burnt out. So, how was the feeling that you know that it's gonna be stopped?
It was all of the commonly known burnout symptoms, right? So I was exhausted. I was highly emotional. I was withdrawn from work. I would literally cry in my car on the way to or from work. And now this is, of course, I'm on my way to work with children. And I just felt miserable. And there were some times where I couldn't even put a finger on exactly why I felt that way. But it turns out too that, burnout really does stem through a problem with your alignment, with what it is that you truly want, what your core values are, your purpose, your passion is detached from what it is that you're truly doing every day. And that's why I've flipped around this, gosh, burnout is this horrible thing to go through. I've sort of flipped that on its head and said, I'm grateful for my burnout because I have chosen to reframe what I have been through to say, how am I going to use this to grow? And so, looking back at, when I was crying in my car to or from work, I was having those conversations and that narrative and telling myself these stories such as, this is your life. You are miserable. You are worthless. You're a horrible person. How dare you go and do this important job and feel this way? This is what your life is like. You will always do the thing that you're doing the way that you're doing it. You will always have the same relationships. You will always have the same conversations. This is it for you. And what I have learned from conversations with teachers is that, everybody has a different goal. Everybody has a different desire. And, some teachers, when they're struggling with burnout, they're feeling miserable because they want to teach. They want to stay in the classroom. They want to enjoy teaching that grade level again. But something is just so off, whether it be their relationship with their administrator or their colleagues or their students, or they're working 12-hour days, 7 days a week. There are all of these different triggers and reasons that teachers are burned out, but they're not acknowledging and showing those emotions and those symptoms the respect that they deserve and actually doing things differently. Where, for me, I had decided that I'm going to fight a battle against this burnout, which was essentially a battle against myself and what it was that I truly wanted, which was to serve these teachers and to work in a different capacity that would have a bigger impact on students, because happy teachers lead happy classrooms, right? So, mhm. My burnout symptoms were much like what you would hear from many other people. They were no different, or no more severe or no less severe than what you hear on a daily basis or read.
Great. I really like the fact that you use this experience as your momentum to create and thus help out more educators. And I personally heard so many American teachers being burned out, and you're doing this great work to be part of the solution, empowering teachers to become a burn-in teacher. So that's dig into more around the burn-in teacher. How do you define burn-in teacher? And what characteristics do burn-in teachers have compared to burn-out teachers?
That's a really great question. And it's actually a question I get a lot because it's such a new term. So everybody knows what a burned out teacher is, right? So, you're well, and I define it as what I call a stage 0 of burnout. So you're isolated, ashamed, stressed, overwhelmed. You're crying. You're showing strong emotions. You keep to yourself. You're really doing nothing different. And you really are just thinking about how impossible this job is and how much you want to quit. Okay. And then what I have done from there is identified 5 additional stages. So there's stages 1 through 5, 5 being burned in. So this is really these stages show growth and changes in habits and thoughts and feelings and actions, leading you to becoming a burned in teacher. And a burned in teacher is the complete opposite of burned out. These teachers who are burned in, who classify themselves as burned in, are empowered, supported, they're organized, they're more balanced. They assure themselves daily that they are working on it. And they're sleeping better. They're showing gratitude. They're even sharing their story to empower others to go on a similar journey. That's the thing that I tell teachers too, is that, burned in teacher is not about keeping you in the classroom if you don't want to be there. Lord knows we don't want unhappy, miserable teachers who do not want to be with kids to be in the classroom. But it's also, I'm also not there to get you out of education, right? I'm not there to keep you in or get you out. What I am there to help you do is to help you to decide and be honest with yourself about what you want, and then help you to take the action steps to get there. So burned in teachers are truly thinking about their passions and their strengths and their story, and they're sharing it with others and helping to empower others to take these actions as well.
Hmm. And also, I found really interesting is that, Amber, you also categorize 3 types of burnout. So what are they, and how did you come up with these 3 types?
That's a great question. So I've done a lot of research on this topic of burnout, and just through my reading and through my own experiences, I've identified those 3 different types. So one type is what I identify as burned and over it. So if you're burned and over it, it means you've been surrounded by colleagues or students or parents and your principal, just a culture of negativity and apathy. And that has sort of just washed over you and been, absorbed as your own attitude. You are negative, you are apathetic. It doesn't matter if I even come to work or how hard I work. I'm going to be super disappointed. It doesn't even matter if I'm here. Okay. Burned and unbalanced is you work all the time. There's always so much to do, not enough time to do it. You used to maybe be okay with having lots of responsibility, but maybe now you have kids and a spouse or a partner at home, or maybe you don't have a family, but you never see your friends. You're exhausted from working all the time. And the third type is burned and bored. So you might seem to have it all together, and you have great systems and you don't work all the time, but you're bored out of your mind. You're bored with your content. You're bored with the monotony of the day. And you maybe actually want a challenge, but you don't know exactly what you want to do. So those are the 3 types. And then if teachers do take my teacher burnout quiz, they could also actually come out on the other end as, not quite burned out, but something is off. And this is actually where, teachers might just be beginning to explore this idea of, oh, am I burned out? Is this what it feels like? And they're doing research and they come to my quiz. And this is actually a great place to catch people because they are not completely burned out. They are just experiencing some sort of challenge in their life that's just making them feel not how they used to feel about teaching.
Yeah, wonderful. And in your book, Hacking Teacher Burnout, I found there are a lot of emphasis on self-awareness, which I think is a super important, not only for teacher, but also for any humankind, especially in this highly distracted world. So from your books, you say, what happens when you lose touch with your self-awareness and stop thinking about your everyday beliefs, habits, and routines? You simply go through the motions. I think you have dissected many ways to understand ourselves more in the book. And first thing I want to touch on is teacher brain. You encourage teachers to understand their teacher brain. What is a teacher brain and why do you think it is important?
Oh, so I love talking about teacher brand so much because it's easy to explain by simply thinking about what are the brands that you associate. We as humans, we we attach ourselves to brands. We have certain restaurants that we like to go to for certain reasons. We have certain restaurants we would never step a foot in for different reasons. We have certain brands that we like to wear. We even have, brands of music that we enjoy and music that we don't enjoy. So a teacher brand is sort of that same way. So I want you to think back, Typhen, to teachers that you have had in the past that you really enjoyed and even loved versus teachers that you hated going to their class every day. I mean, can you kind of relate to that?
Yeah.
Right? And then now I have my own children. I have 2 daughters, and this always intrigues me. And they always know that they always tell me, Mom, quit going burned in teacher on me. Because I'm always like, well, what do you like about this teacher? What do they, how do they talk to you? What is their classroom? Because I'm trying to get them to kind of tell me a little bit about their teacher brand. So teacher brand is exactly like, thinking about, okay, do you like McDonald's or Burger King better? Why? What's a fast food restaurant that you would never go to? It's the same thing with teachers. It's the way we act, the way that we behave, the way that we deliver our content. It's really how we take care of ourselves. And this isn't a vanity thing here. This isn't about who's the prettiest, who has the best clothes, who drives the coolest car. That's not what I'm talking about. Teacher brand is what people think, feel, and believe about you based on repeated interactions with you. So, you probably heard the quote before, from Maya Angelou, people will forget what you say, they'll forget what you do, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. Mm-hmm. That's teacher brand. It's how do you feel whenever you walk into their classroom? What do they say? How do they make you feel? How do they deliver their content? And what are their core values based on what you know about them? So, everybody can have a bad day, right? I mean, nobody's perfect. And, teacher brand is also not about, and becoming a burned-in teacher is not about being, YouTube or Instagram famous or being Pinterest worthy and being like the cutest teacher. Teacher brand is truly about how they take care of themselves and their classroom and their content and how they make people feel around them. And really, teacher brand is whatever your people say that it is. So all you would have to do to identify a teacher brand is ask several students, hey, tell me a little bit about Mrs. Harper. And they will let you know. You'll hear it in their adjectives. You'll see it in their body language. You'll hear it. You'll see it in their faces of what that teacher's brand is.
That's really great. So, Amber, when you try to figure out your own teacher brand, how does the process look like? And is there any moment that you just feel like, oh, this is how people feel me? What's the kind of the reactions or situation that makes you understand, oh, I know what my teacher brand is?
Yeah. So one thing that I do with teachers, and I lay it out in the book too, is to think kind of, about the 5 W's. So who, what, where, when, and why. So think about, who do you hang out with? Who do you associate with? What are their behaviors? How would teachers describe them? Okay, where do you typically hang out? And how does that help others to identify your brand? So it's just kind of those 5 W's about, what do these 5 W's say about me? And the other thing that I suggest teachers do is write down the 10 or less or more, write down adjectives that you want people to use to describe you. Okay? So if you were to write all of those down, now go out and ask people. Go out and ask that hard question. Hey, how would you describe me? Because in your head, you might want to say that you're calm and happy and organized and healthy. But then maybe you go out and you ask students or you ask teachers or you ask your family or your principal, and they say, tired, exhausted, sometimes a little frazzled and disorganized. Okay? Is their perception of you, their overall branding of you, does that match what you want? And if not, what are you going to do about it? Because brands can be changed. So that's the good news about it. This whole self-awareness piece is kind of hard to go through, but it's really important in helping you to decide, okay, if you have a goal, who do you have to be to get to that goal? Because you can't wait until you reach that goal to become that person. You have to be that person now. And this doesn't mean, like I said, this is not a comparison game. This is not keeping up with the Joneses. This isn't being somebody that you hate being to impress people that you don't like in a place you hate working. Okay? This is about truly aligning how you behave, what you think, how you feel with your core values, and what it is that you truly want out of this life that you have.
Yeah. And other than that, other than the teacher brand, you also put lots of effort to um, the happy and strengths in your book. So, what are the ways to identify our happy and strengths?
Yeah, great question. So the habits, it used to just be, so you're kind of highlighting two of the first three steps in the burned in process. So, well, and you asked me about, the three types of burnout. So that's B, begin where you are. And then U is that self-awareness piece, that teacher branding piece, that's understand your teacher brand. So burned in is an 8-step process. And now you're talking about N, nurture. It used to be just nurture your strengths. But the deeper I got into my research and my own work on myself, because I practice what it is that I'm teaching. I use the burn-in process all the time when I am struggling or when I'm faced with a challenge. I think about, okay, what are my triggers? When did this start? How long has this been happening? Okay, that's begin where you are. You understand your teacher brand. How would somebody with the brand that I want to emulate, how would they handle this? How would they talk? What would they do? Okay. And then I think about, okay, are the habits that I have in my daily life, are they helping me to be the best version of myself? Or am I bringing habits into my daily life that are keeping me stuck? Are they keeping me back? Do these habits match the person that I want to be? So for example, if I go back to, if you had the adjectives that you wanted to be, you want to be healthy, you want to be organized, you want to be well rested, you want to be strong, for your students and for your own family. Okay, am I drinking 5 Diet Cokes a day? Am I going to bed at 1 a.m. and getting up at, right at the last second? So I don't even have time to shower. I'm getting in my car, and going straight to work without breakfast. Am I scrolling through Instagram and hating myself when I could be getting my stuff together and getting organized, or communicating better with my family so that they can help with the chores so I'm not doing all the work myself? Or am I rethinking the way that I'm planning and grading to make things simpler? So it really is, everything we do is a habit, Typhon. Everything we do, down to what we say to ourselves when we first wake up in the morning. That's a habit. And those are things that we are the only ones who can change or bring better habits or get rid of unhealthy habits in our lives. Because if we don't first think about our habits, nurturing our strengths is going to be lost to us, because our habits really do determine if we are going to strengthen our strengths or if we are going to ignore them. And nurturing your habits and strengths really go together well, because you have to continue to learn about yourself and learn how you can, Stephen Covey says, sharpen the saw, how we can get better at the things that we're good at by consistently working on them, by consistently paying attention to our strengths. Because we could tell you all the things about ourselves that we don't like or that are bad, right? Those are the things that get called out, on our teacher evaluations, and things like that, what you can improve on. We don't typically pay attention to the things that are going well. But if we're constantly putting a spotlight on the things that we're not naturally good at, we're constantly working at bringing up those, which we, there's nothing wrong with wanting to improve, the things that we could become better at. But I really truly believe that if we focus on what are we naturally good at, what do we naturally enjoy, how can we bring more of that into our daily life? How can I get even better at these things that I encourage people to take a personality test or the Gallup Strengths Finder assessment, the Myers-Briggs. Just have some affirmation that maybe the things that you're quote unquote getting in trouble for at work could be the things that are actually you're really good at and they're trying to shine through. You just need to work on your self-awareness and how you're using them. So, part of what I learned in my own burned in journey is that one of my top strengths is activator. And that's actually one of my core values is if I see a problem or if I see something happening, and like I said earlier, you tell me what to do and I will do it. If I see value and that it will help me or somebody else, I will do it. I'm not going to wait. I'm going to do it now. And that, in addition to another strength, which is command, which is when I sit in a room, I will take charge in a second. Especially if nobody else is going to raise their hand, I'll raise my hand. I'll do it. I will lead this charge. Well, that didn't always sit very well with principals that I had because they looked at it because I am also I have woo as well as one of my top strengths. And so I go into a room full of strangers and I feel like I'm leaving with a handful of friends and we're all in this together and, and we're a team. And the way that I tried to handle some of these things just was not proactive for myself. And that was really when I started to gain my, self-awareness that I had to say, part of being self-aware is knowing when you need to dial some things back. And that was something that I had to truly, know where it was that I fit in this puzzle, of this team of being in school and know that, you are very strong-willed and very outspoken. And that's a good thing. But it's not a good thing all the time, especially in the way that you're putting your ideas out there. So that's part of the self-awareness game too. But if you don't even know your strengths, you could be consistently looking at them as things that are bad. And they're not. They're wonderful. And it's up to you to nurture those habits and strengths in a way that help you to reach your goals.
Yeah, that's really a great example. Thank you for sharing that, Amber. And let's assume that now we identify our habits and strengths. We know what we want to change. Is there any tips to nurture them or even change the bad habit? Because it's like sometimes it's also stressful to change the habits and people would just give up. So any tips that you would suggest that so that we can really change our habits eventually?
Yeah. And this is a long game too, Typhon. This is not, you're not going to completely grow or, some people say, and I still say it sometimes, beat that burnout tomorrow. It's a process and it's going to take trial and error. It's going to take having some hard conversations. And like you said earlier too, I just lost my train of thought. But what I would suggest that you do is you track your habits. So what do you do from the moment you wake up? What time are you waking up? And then what are you doing after that? And then what are you doing after that? What is your routine like? Okay, what does it look like? What are you doing during school? It's really, I know what it was. You had said something about, going through the motions. Okay, this is where we really start to get into those routines and habits, and we look at it as our forever reality. And this is where, you see in the movies where, the star of the movie, the main character has their wake up call. And then the emotional music starts playing and you see this kind of fast forward into all of these changes that they're making. Well, it's because they finally woke up and they went from being a passive observer to an active participant in their life. And this is where, in order to do that, you have to pay attention. And in order to do that, you have to back up from there and say, okay, what am I doing in the morning and why am I doing it that way? Is it because it is the best way to do it for me, or is it because it's the way I've always done it? And then you can also look at that in the way that you're teaching, planning, grading, interacting with your kids. Why are you doing things the way that you're doing them, when you're doing them, And why? Is it because you've always done it that way? Is that because whenever you were student teaching, is that what your master teacher taught you to do? So you've just picked up on it? Is it because it's the culture of the school, or because you know it's what's best for you and your kids? There's nothing wrong with you doing things that help your job, especially now. There is nothing wrong with thinking, how can I make this simple? How can I make this simple? Not how can I make it Pinterest worthy? How can I make this cute so I can post it on Instagram? How can I make this simple? Because if it's difficult and overcomplicated and making everybody miserable, there's no reason to keep doing it that way, other than you're telling yourself the story that this is the way it has to be done. So it really has to do with upping your activity and your attention and focusing on what you're doing every minute of the day for a few days. And then really questioning yourself, why am I doing this? So that's the place to start. And then, of course, it's really the hardest part is having the discipline to make those changes and change your habits. And this is where you can't just set goals and make changes on New Year's Eve and your birthday. This is a lifelong process. This is you making the decision and saying, I am going to do and be different. Because if I don't do and be different, I can't have the life that I want to have. And this is not saying that you want to be rich or that you want to climb Mount Everest. This is saying, I want to have more time to do the things that I love. Okay, so let's work. We need to actually start with why? Why do you want more time to be with your family? Because it makes me feel happy to be with them. Well, first of all, you have to behave like a happy person. You have to do the things that a happy person would do, because you can't just wanting to have something is just a wish if there's no action behind it. So this is truly about not just adopting this for a short time. I talk about, one of the biggest things that one of the foundational beliefs in the Burned In Teacher Tribe is that everything starts with a vision first. What do you see your life being like? Okay, what is your plan to get there? What are you actually doing in your day-to-day life to help you to achieve that vision? And then the hard part, and this is where a lot of people get lost in this misery, because this is the hard part, is how am I bringing this daily and by the minute discipline and saying, no, I don't do this anymore. I don't scroll through Instagram when I should be planning my lessons just because it's boring. For me, maybe for somebody it's boring. For some teachers, they love planning, right? But it's saying, I don't do that anymore. Or when you start to talk nasty or start to use nasty words to describe another teacher or a student, or the making biased judgments about a family, saying to yourself, no, I don't do that anymore. It makes me miserable. It doesn't change a thing. It's making unfair judgments about the way that this family lives their life. It's not okay. And then moving on, being that person that you want to be. And then, no, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Amber.
So then it's then from the discipline, it's just being intentional about everything that you do, and constantly saying, why am I doing this? Okay, it's because it's going to help me to do this thing that makes me happy. It's going to help me to leave at the time that I want to leave. It's going to help me to build better relationships with my principal, who in the past we've had a horrible relationship. And I know that a relationship works both ways. And, it's just really helping you to, again, be that active participant in your life that maybe you haven't been for a while.
Yeah, there are lots of great tips here. Mm-hmm. So
thank you.
First, start with the vision. Imagine what you will become and track your habits daily, and ask yourself, how can I make this simple? And understand that this is a long-term process. So we got to be disciplined.
Yeah. And if I can say too, the burned in process is not a one and done. It's not something that you go through and then you say, okay, done. It is any time you are faced with a challenge, whether it be the global pandemic and teaching virtually, Or you maybe have a new student in your class that moves in, 3 or 4 weeks after school starts, and they are a challenge to you. Or, somebody rear ends you, while you're sitting at a stoplight. This is any challenge that you're faced with, really thinking about, how am I going to handle this? What would somebody, and like I said, everybody's going to have a bad day, but it's really coming back to this process anytime that you're finding yourself starting to go through or go down that path of everything stinks, life sucks, I'm a horrible person, I'm a horrible teacher, and this is just awful. I can't deal with this. Rather than that, saying, okay, where do I begin? Okay, how do I handle this as somebody who wants to be calm, who is somebody who wants to be a model for my students and for my family? What is my true challenge here? Okay, what is my solution? Like, really going through and helping you to focus forward, because where teachers become so burned out that they quit teaching is they get stuck. They get stuck in those negative stories. They get stuck in the negative culture. They get stuck with that lizard brain that we have that keeps us saying the same negative things to ourselves and telling ourselves the same negative stories every day. And then we see that as the truth. We see that as the reality. And the burned in process is really, like I said earlier, what I needed 7+ years ago to say, this doesn't have to be the way that you look at it. This doesn't have to be the school that you teach at forever. This doesn't have to be the grade level that you teach forever. This doesn't even have to be your job forever. Like, give yourself permission to say, I have control over everything that I do and everything that I say, and even everything that I think and believe. Beliefs are choices. And Marie Forleo says, beliefs are choices and choices can be changed. And I think sometimes we get so deeply ingrained in our beliefs and we see them as the absolute 100% truth that we don't believe that there's any way to change. And there is.
So out of my curiosity, Amber, I'm wondering if you have ever had a habit that you have a really hard time to change and how you overcome that.
That's a really good question. One habit that I have that I still am challenged with on a daily basis is my number one strength is futuristic. I'm always thinking 10, 20, 50 steps ahead. I'm always looking to the next thing. And that has become a habit that makes it hard for me to focus on the present and to be mindful of what I'm doing right now. Even talking to you right now, Typhen, I'm thinking about, okay, I've got to get this thing done by Friday because I'm not going to work on the weekend. I'm going to get this, so I'm thinking about what I'm going to do after our conversation. But then I do have that, like I said, I practice what I preach. So I do have that voice in me that says, no, you are here, you're having this wonderful conversation. You're going to focus on making it as wonderful as it can possibly be. And that stuff will be waiting for you later. You know what you're going to do. You know when you're going to do it. So stop. So just focus on what you're doing now. So it definitely is. And like I said earlier, your strengths, they are strengths. They are, the futuristic part in me is the part that created Burned In Teacher. When I couldn't really explain to people what it was because I knew what it could become, but it was hard for me to explain it. And that's a great thing. That makes me a fabulous entrepreneur because I can see how this is going to impact people in the future. But it also can be a negative thing because it can really hinder me from focusing on the present and being grateful for where I am right now and what I'm doing right now, being able to just sit with my family and not be thinking about this wonderful conversation I'm going to have with Typhen tomorrow, So that's definitely the number one challenge that I consistently struggle with.
All right. Thank you, Amber, for sharing that. So we have covered few tips that we can use to take care of ourselves. And if you want to know more, I would encourage you to read Hacking Teacher Burnout by Amber, which will give you more and more hacks that you can incorporate into your life. So I have just few questions I got for you, Amber. The first one would be, what are the 1 to 2 books that have influenced your thinking a lot in the past few years?
Oh my gosh, I always love answering this question. So number one, a book that I actually listened to first and then actually bought the book because I wanted to do so much highlighting as I was listening to it is 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do. It's by Amy Morin, and it is fabulous for teachers. It even goes into, a lot of teachers will classify themselves as people pleasers and type A personalities. And she actually says that it is none of your business to try to please everybody. And that is something, as a mentally strong person, you cannot consistently be worried about making everybody else happy. And that is the number one book that I recommend to teachers. Another book that I just read, just in the past year is, and I just quoted her, is Everything is Figure Outable by Marie Forleo. It's a fabulous book.
If you have a super women power to change the education system in the US, what would it be?
Oh my goodness. Only one thing. I think that and this is not just about the education system, but I think first and foremost if I could honestly be a superhero and go back, I would honestly think about, when education started in America, why it started, and what the purpose of education is. That's what I would change, because I think the purpose of education has been, I'm trying to say this carefully. The purpose of education in America has really turned into a way that we can cause students to lose their voice, maybe lose their culture, and to conform and not to dream. And I think this is what a lot of teachers really are challenged with, because they want to empower students to share their voice. They want students to use their story to change the world. They know the power that our students have to make our world a better place. However, there are systems that have been put in place to keep students and teachers from dreaming big and from, not conforming to a system of yes, sir, yes, ma'am. You have to work super hard to do anything in life. You have to climb the ladder of success. Well, that's not necessarily true. And I think that a lot of teachers know this. And I think, what else, more importantly, I think a lot of students know this too. And that's why we're having so many challenges with behavior. Because teachers have this constant battle between, I know what's truly right for kids, but I'm being told that I have to do this. And, students have those same battles too. I know what is good for me. I know what I need, but I'm being told to do this. And it's just this constant cyclical battle. And I think if I could go back and really design the education system to be truly, and not just to be a buzzword, to truly be what it should be, to be best for our students, and really just rebuild it from the ground up.
Yeah.
Really what I would do.
Yeah. That's really great. So before we close out, Amber, do you have any other thoughts, programs, or workshops you want to share with our listeners?
Are you talking specifically about things that I offer, or?
Yeah, anything that you want to share, or any other thoughts you want to put out there?
I think I mentioned it once. First, I'll talk about a thought, is everything begins and ends with your beliefs. If you believe that life is miserable, and you believe that teaching is horrible, and you believe that there's no way that you could possibly change it, then that will be your truth. But if you change your belief to say, I am responsible for me, it is nobody else's quote unquote fault that I am where I am than me. I made the decision. It's interesting because I just interviewed somebody a while ago, Jen Molitor. She said, I chose education. She said, she actually said, education chose me and I'm going to choose it back. But the fact is, she chose to be in education. you chose to be a teacher. If you don't want to be a teacher, be honest with yourself. But if you want to be a teacher and you want to be a happier, more fulfilled teacher, then how does a teacher who wants to be happy, how are you going to behave? What are you going to think? What are you going to do? Starting right now, because you can make those small changes right now that will have a huge impact on your life later. It all starts with believing that you are 100% responsible for your life. So with that, a simple action step that you can take is validating yourself, is taking the Teacher Burnout Quiz. So burnedinteacher.com/burnout quiz. You can take the quiz. It's totally free. It's only 6 questions. It will help you to really identify what type of burnout am I experiencing, and then I give you next steps you can take for that specific type. And I also send you my free ebook. It's called Stages. So it walks you through the 6 stages of burnout and what you can think, do, and really feel in order to navigate your way and help you to grow your way out of burnout rather than fight against it.
Right. All right. That's a really, really wonderful comment about everything that you're doing, Amber. So if people want to learn more about your work, how can they find you online? I think we have talked about the burnedinteacher.com, right?
Yep.
And anything other they can find you online?
Yeah. So of course, burnedinteacher.com. And then you can find me on any social media platform at burnedinteacher. And then if you want to learn more about Hacking Teacher Burnout, you can just go to hackingteacherburnout.com. You can learn a little bit about what the book is, what it stands for, and then it is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble as well.
Thank you for listening. We will put the things mentioned in the interview to the show notes. If you enjoy our show, welcome to share and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.